Hey guys, here we go into a special video on the true boxer stance. Now, this is something that's being heavily pushed by this guy Marvin Cook, and I just want to right off the bat say this is some of the absolute dumbest shit I've ever seen or heard. If this guy tried to fight anyone like this, he would get absolutely destroyed. He wouldn't be able to beat, even the smallest boxers. So, first off, there are a lot of components to your kinetic chain, starting from your heels all the way up to your head. They're all part of your kinetic chain, and being able to generate power through your kinetic chain and drive that kinetic chain through your opponent is what gives you power in your punches, the ability to, really assault somebody. And Marvin Cook's strategy here for his stance is to always make sure that you're in this kind of cocked stance with your right shoulder back, your left shoulder forward, right? This motion, because he always wants this hand to be able to create a line between his opponent's face and his hand, which is reasonable, right? Yeah, you do want to be able to always connect that line. But he always wants that line to be the shortest or the longest distance away, right? So he's trying to control the space already in theory with punches and not feints and probes and positional changes. Now, another part of this idea is that your hip, this hip is always pointed at your opponent. And one of the things that's interesting about that idea is that means that you're never going to be transferring your weight to the front foot unless you're throwing a right hand, in theory. Except that his theory also doesn't allow you to change your position when you throw your right hand. He always wants you to stay on the back foot here. So when you throw your right hand, you're not going to transfer your weight and bring your shoulder forward and transfer your weight to your front leg. You're going to take a hop step and kind of pendulum step to the side. He doesn't call it a pendulum step. He doesn't probably understand the body mechanics and the weight management involved in leaning on the front foot to hop step to the back foot to transfer your weight into the new position in the right hand. But what's going on is he's essentially saying that you always want to be hiding your rear foot here. Okay. Now, what happens here, if you hide your rear foot, let's take a look at all their heels. They're in a line, okay? And that means that their head can only move on this line and still allow them to control their body mechanics. So the moment that you move your head off of this line, you lose all of your ability to transition your weight, change positions, and cross your opponent's line. And that motion is called ducking, right? When people bend at the waist and they duck. Now, the reason, well, there are a few reasons, but there are a lot of flaws in his technique and his theory, and all of them stem from this right here, okay? Right here. Number one, if your weight can only go in on this line, that means it's only going forward and back if your shoulder is pointed at your opponent. Okay, that means that it's impossible to slip punches and get off the line. If your opponent throws any straight punch and it's on this line, straight down, your head has nowhere to go. How are you blocking this punch? Number one, you can't block a left hook because you can't bring your hand up. You're not going to be able to get into position one. And what position are you blocking right hands in? From this position. How do you bring your shoulder back? How do you get your arm back? Well, your weight's already back there. But are there opportunities to counter and pull counter? Not really, because from this position, you can't really get your weight onto the front foot. You can't really transfer or change positions. There's nowhere laterally for your weight to go, right? It's on this linear line. Now, we're going to take a look at some examples and kind of talk about how to slip punches and how to counter and, cool stuff and use the line, but all in an effort to kind of, talk about these ideas here. But what I want you to pay attention to is, the foot positioning, right? And the idea is that you want to be hiding your heel, right? That's like a big idea in here. But also never moving your head, okay? These are all like really important ideas in his boxing theory. And we're going to be taking a look at number one, Naoya Inoue, okay? Here he is leaning all his weight on the front foot. Okay, he's baiting punches to this position. Now, this is also the same position that you wind up in when you throw your right hand or right before you throw your left hook. So what's he doing with that position? Well, he's trying to throw a right hand with it. right? So he's going to pull counter this shot, slip it just a little bit, and then get on the inside of that shot and throw his right hand. But let's take a look at his foot position, okay? One heel is here, one heel is here, and when he crosses that line, he's going to rotate his shoulders. Now this part happens, right? But just naturally, as your weight is transferring to the front foot, boom, your shoulders have to rotate, right? And you have to change positions. And this is an important step in transferring your weight. As you can see now, Naoya Inoue has all his weight here in these 3 points, his heel, his knee, and his head. And they're creating a line, and that allows him to sink his weight onto the front foot and carry it through his opponent's head. Now, we're going to take a look at this clip, a very similar clip where, again, one heel here, and you can see the other one is here. See where his line is? See how there's this much of his line is exposed? This is the same amount of his line that's exposed when he's throwing the right hand as well. But all of this zone here gives him space to move his head and transfer his weight. Okay? So what happens, his opponent jabs at him and meets him on the line, and immediately he takes his head from near that front foot position and starts transferring it and pulling it to the back foot, dragging his weight to the back foot. But this cannot be achieved if he doesn't have a line in which to move his head. Okay? So if his back foot was here, he wouldn't be able to get into this position because he wouldn't have a way in this direction to carry his weight. His weight would be moving straight back in this way, and there'd be no opportunity to cross his opponent's line with his hand. As you can see, the way that the shoulder rotation works from this position, he has his shoulders rotated this way, and when he finishes his punch, his shoulders are going to rotate back this way. Okay? And that's the exact opposite way that it's going to work if you're throwing a right hand. But if your feet are parallel in this way, your hands cannot move across this line in that manner because they're already engaged and only moving in this manner. But if your feet are this way and your heel is exposed, now that's not a real idea, hiding your heel, okay? But the idea is more appropriately that you want one foot on each side of your target, okay? And having one foot on each side of your target allows you to transfer your weight through these points with your hands. But in Marvin Cook's strategy, his foot is back here, and there's no opportunity for you to get your weight on either side of your opponent's head so that you can actually punch or transfer your weight through that target. Now, how does that work with slipping punches? Well, slipping punches is exactly the same thing. And as we see here, Canelo Alvarez with a much wider stance than is being demonstrated by Marvin Cook. And this is what allows him to slip and transfer his weight. As you can see, boom, boom, boom. His weight is all on the back foot now, and he's trying to slip punches and get his head off the line. Okay? Then on the front foot, as you can see here, all his weight is here. And he has this line in between his feet. But because he's not hiding his heel, he has space to move along that line and cross his opponent's line and set up punches. Now, obviously here, he's only using it for defense, slipping this punch, getting his weight again on the heel, right? Creating a line between these 2 points. And now his opponent is going to attack him. And here's his line. Here's the line here that he can move his head on. What is he going to do? Transfer his weight to the other side of that line. And that's how your head movement works. A few more clips here. So here he is, slipping to the front foot. And now look, that same position, slipping to the front foot where he was using it for defense, is now the same position he's using to set up his offense and hide and disguise his right hand, which is an idea that I talk about on my channel through the idea of an active guard, constantly changing between your positions. Now, at the basis of it, you have 2 positions, the one on the front foot, position 1, and the one on the back foot, position 2. But there are neutral zones in which that you're going to be sitting in the middle of your line, sometimes baiting punches so you can move out of those positions, or so that you can throw feints and probes off of those positions. But as you can see, in these positions, getting to the front foot is a huge part of being able to get power or throw your right hand. being able to transfer your weight. But it's also a huge part of your ability to defend yourself and slip punches, as you need to be able to get your head out of that center line. Otherwise, your opponent's always going to know where your head is. A few more sequences here. Again, the front foot. And the difference is the difference between space in this line, again, and where he can move his weight. Now, one thing I want to show here is that Danny Jacobs, if you pay attention to his stance, he's very similarly in that line here, okay? With that Marvin Cook talks about in keeping your feet in this line and hiding your heel. It's very karate style. It's very, from like martial arts style, because you don't want to expose your legs to leg kicks or your balance or whatever. You need to be able to get your weight away from your opponent when they're kicking at you. But this is boxing, and we don't have kicking. So having a more quote-unquote squared stance is not inhibitive to us. It's only a catalyst for setting up our offense and our defense and stuff. But what I want you to pay attention to is Danny Jacobs' inability to slip any of these punches, as he can't get his head off the line for any of these attacks here. Again, he has no ability to slip punches because his feet, his heels, are in a straight line. Technically, he's hiding his back heel away, so he gets stuck on the line with that jab right there. He gets stuck on the line with this jab right here. Again, if you notice when he's leaning back here, it's because his line only goes this way. It doesn't go this way. So when these punches come, he doesn't have the opportunity to move his head into new places on this line. And then again, slipping here, paying attention, again, getting back to Canelo Alvarez, using his head movement here to disguise these punches. Back foot, right? So his weight is here, on the back foot here. And because he has his heel over heel, here, he can get his head to one side of Danny Jacobs' head. Now he slips to the front foot. Ooh. Back foot. Front foot, right? He has a foot on either side of Danny Jacobs' head, so he can throw punches, and he can threaten Danny Jacobs with the jab from the back foot, or he can slip to the front foot with the same hand and throw the left hook. But again, changing positions and having one foot on either side of your opponent's head so that you can more evenly distribute your weight, transfer your weight, and change positions, right? Again, getting to the front foot. Now, another rule that you break in Marvin Cook's theory, the loaded gun, right? Where's the loaded gun here? Well, right now the loaded gun is the right hand, but he's able to feint and probe and control with the right hand, as I'll show in the next clip. But that position right there, getting to the front foot, is extremely important to being able to set up the left hook. Now, also, that same head movement, getting to the front foot here, allowing you to set up the left hook to the body, right? This is a very important idea to being able to set up the left hook to the body, is getting to the front foot. And that motion, again, is also derived off of that head movement or transfer of your weight, crossing your opponent's line, getting your weight to the front foot. Again, something else that you cannot do with Marvin Cook's quote-unquote true boxer stance. Now, another thing that Marvin Cook says that you cannot do when you in boxing is throw a left hook after you throw a right hand. So when you throw your right hand, you get all your weight to the front foot here, just like Canelo Alvarez, and he talks about the idea of having to reset from this position and find your weight. But this is the position that you're supposed to be throwing your left hook from. But Marvin Cook doesn't know how to transfer his weight. He doesn't understand how to get his weight to the front foot. He spends probably all his time on the balls of his foot, and he doesn't realize that this is the position that you need to be in to throw your left hook. As you can see, Canelo Alvarez, and watch his head. Watch where his head is during the course of his weight transition, right? It's in the middle here, and he's going to drag it to the front foot as he throws his right hand. Now his head is over the front foot. Now when he throws that left hook, where's his head wind up? Here, on the back half of his line. It's not a perfect line here, right? But it's really good. It's a really good line. And being able to move his head across the line, as we saw with his slipping, right, when he was moving his head around while Jacobs was jabbing at him, this protects his head. So having a line here where you're able to get your foot on one side of your target or the other, right? And it's not super clear, but because of the dimensions here, if you had a triangle for where that was, it's like this, and you can make the triangle like this. But the idea is throwing punches and having a zone like this in which you can move your head as you transfer your weight also creates safety in your offense as well, which is something, again, that Marvin Cook's boxing theory lacks for a number of reasons. Now, one thing that Marvin Cook does get right is that when you throw your right hand, you want them to be in this zone, this quadrant, I think he calls it, where your shoulder is forward. But because he doesn't believe in transferring his weight or changing positions and getting his weight to the front foot, he doesn't have a way to manipulate his opponent into this position other than by taking a step and kind of shuffling around until he gets his opponent in that position. Again, which you would never get to do against even the most basic or awful of professional fighters. They're not just going to let you take 3 weight transitions in front of them to get that angle without letting their hands go and really hitting you with some good shots. But this idea, getting your weight to the front foot to allow you to throw the right hand, is also present here as he slips his weight to the front foot, and he can use the right hand here to control Jacobs, right? Doesn't have to be a power punch. It can be just a quick right hand. As you can see here, a quick right hand, just shooting that shot. And again, a punch that's opened up by having an active guard and slipping and transferring his weight to the front foot. He can disguise that punch and hide it, but also understanding that punch is only available if you get your weight to the front foot. Okay. Now, again, he doesn't believe that you can land these punches without changing positions, or rather, without stepping or moving around, but simply changing the angle and changing positions as Canelo Alvarez goes from the back foot to the front foot. Getting his weight here allows him to more easily connect the line between his shoulder and his opponent's face, which is his arm, right? Connect that line and punch him in the face. But none of that is possible if you can't transfer your weight and change positions. And keeping your shoulder always pointed at your opponent, right? And again, that's something that it looks like Danny Jacobs tries to emulate. And as you can see here, he has a terrible time slipping and getting away from punches. It's very difficult for him to accomplish any of that. Most notably in this clip here, as he just kind of gets banged on by Canelo Alvarez. But anyway, the true boxer stance, the idea, let's get back to Marvin Cook's video here. The idea here for him is that you always want this point and your lead hand, right? Heel, hip, and hand pointed at your opponent. You want these to be the closest zones so that you can always basically be punching him in the face to push him away. However, we know in Fouts boxing theory that if you're controlling the space between you and your opponent by punching and not by feinting and probing and changing positions, like Canelo Alvarez, changing positions, if you're not giving him different looks, feinting, probing, slipping to the front foot, throwing the left hook, right? If you're not doing these things and you just throw punches at your opponent, they're going to counter you and they're going to knock you out. And Marvin Cook's theory and the way that he positions his feet and locks his hand at his opponent doesn't allow him to properly feint and probe, doesn't allow him to properly change positions and threaten his opponent's positions. Now, one really good example of that is Jason Maloney. He always entered the line in this fight from the exact same position. Okay. Now, also, if you notice a little bit of his boxing, if you look at his feet here, he kind of enters in a similar position that Marvin Cook talks about, always with this shoulder forward. And as he enters the line here, because he always enters in the same position, he doesn't ever bring his right shoulder forward. He doesn't ever transfer his weight to the front foot. Very rarely does he. But this is the position that you're always going to be entering the line in against your opponents, no matter what, whether you're feinting or probing or throwing real punches with your jab, right? Whether it's a hard jab or it's a soft jab. And as we saw in this fight with Jason Maloney, this is a feint here. He's not actually punching at Naoya Inoue. He's looking to set up his right hand, but Naoya Inoue is able to read the position and still able to counter him with that left hook because of the fact that Jason Maloney is so predictable, because he can only enter the line in that one position. Because he doesn't have an active guard, he doesn't transfer his weight, and he doesn't have the ability to properly feint and probe and threaten Naoya Inoue's position. So Naoya Inoue was able to set up counters with that same timing with the left hook all night long, as well as with the right hand in the same exact position. Again, because Maloney, whether he's throwing that jab as a punch, boom, there, or he's throwing it as a feint here, he's always entering the line in the same position and getting caught with the counters. Now, some parallels to the Marvin Cook theory, right? But to be honest, stepping and sliding onto the line is probably not something you're going to be able to do from this Marvin Cook's position either. Just because the mechanics to lining up all of your power and stuff, again, if your feet are in a line like this and they're pointed at your opponent, you have no ability to cross the line or transfer your weight or lean or get your weight into your power or get your weight into your punches. So you have no power. But also from these positions, again, you can't slip punches. You can't roll punches. There are a lot of really interesting incongruent ideas present in this boxing theory. And I think that if you actually try to use this against somebody, and you're not Danny Jacobs, who actually can punch, by the way. He practices his jab for the most part from that kind of theory, or his defense from that theory, but he definitely gets his power in his punches. He definitely crosses the line when he throws his punches and changes his foot position. So there's a massive irony in that too. Even Maloney, as you saw when he was setting up for his shot, when he got on the line, he spread his feet. We can actually take a look at that too. But you can see when he's entering the line here, his feet are straight up and down. And now when he gets on the line, because he knows he needs to get power in that shot, he needs to cross that line with the right hand. Even Maloney is doing it right. But anyway. So you can't always keep your shoulder pointed at your opponent. It just doesn't work that way. You have to be able to feint and probe, and you have to be able to change positions as we saw Canelo Alvarez do. You have to be able to get that. You have to be able to get that right shoulder forward. You have to be able to get to that front foot here, punch your opponent here, right? Set up crosses, slip to the front foot. Again, where's that shoulder, right? This one's now the shotgun, right? That same position. But get into the front foot so you can set up the cross. Get to the front foot so you can set up the left hook. But that's not negotiable. And in the rules for Marvin Cook's boxing theory, there's no space for slipping punches. There's no space for feinting and probing. There's no space for pendulum steps either. If you can't get your weight to the front foot, how are you going to pendulum step like Savannah Marshall, right? That was some beautiful boxing, and those are all moves that are completely hidden and locked away if you don't practice getting your weight to the front foot or to the back foot and keeping one foot on each side of your target. Anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. And if you're interested in learning more about active guard, if you're learning more about changing positions, crossing the line, transferring your weight, check out my Patreon. I do boxing coaching for fighters of all levels, even professional fighters, and maybe even some famous ones that you've heard of, actually, definitely. But I only talk about that on Patreon, so if you want to check it out. But anyway, or if you're just looking for full fight film studies, I do all my post-fight film studies there, all 12 rounds, or as many as the fighters give us. And it's a lot of fun, a lot of interesting boxing talk and cool stuff. So check out the link in the description, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks, guys.